I heard their laughter before I opened the front door. Light, easy, familiar in a way that used to include me. I stepped inside, the grocery bag sagging on my arm, and caught the last flicker of my daughter-in-law's smile before it disappeared behind the rim of her wine glass. My son didn't even look up from the couch. "We thought you were staying at Margaret's," he said, eyes still on the television. "That was 2 days ago. I'd told him I'd be back this afternoon." I set the bag down on the kitchen counter, slowly. The sink was full. Empty cans, 2 wine bottles, plates smeared with something creamy and expensive. Her perfume hung in the air, sweet, like orchids, and the cushions on the couch had been rearranged. I could tell by the way mine was missing. She glanced over at me. Not unfriendly, but not kind either. "We didn't know when you'd be back. I told you. Wednesday." "Oh, right." She smiled again, but smaller. "Must have slipped our minds." I didn't say anything. Not yet. But I stood there a little longer than necessary, looking at the mess, the dishes, the half-finished bottle of wine with lipstick on the rim. Something about the whole room had shifted in my absence. And in that moment, I knew it wasn't my house anymore. I carried the groceries to the refrigerator in silence. Bananas, milk, a loaf of rye bread, and the same brand of unsalted butter I've used since 1983. No one offered to help. I moved around them like I was intruding in my own kitchen. His kitchen now, I suppose. Or hers. They kept talking, softer now. Something about a new rug for the nursery. My granddaughter, due in November, who would arrive into a world where I was gently, carefully being repositioned as a visitor. "You should have seen the one at Pottery Barn," she said. "A little pricey, but worth it for the aesthetic." My son murmured something agreeable. When I turned, she was rubbing her stomach absent-mindedly, eyes dreamy. "We want the whole place done before the baby comes. That's the goal." I looked around. The guest room had already been emptied, my sewing table gone, the rocking chair wrapped in plastic and shoved into the garage. She hadn't even asked if she could use it. Just told me one morning, cheerful as ever, that they were reimagining the space. I closed the fridge and wiped my hands on a dish towel. "So," I said, keeping my voice even, "did you get the mail while I was gone?" He looked up finally. "Mail?" There was a letter I was expecting. "From the notary." "Oh." He turned to her. "Did we check the mail this week?" She laughed. "I haven't even thought about it. Things have been so hectic with the remodel." I nodded. Of course. They hadn't checked. I walked to the front hall and opened the small brass box myself. Empty. Back in the living room, she had pulled a catalog onto her lap and was thumbing through with the focus of someone solving a puzzle. "Oh," she said suddenly, "we've been meaning to talk to you." My stomach tightened. I knew what was coming. Some kind of nudge. A gentle suggestion. Maybe phrased as a question, but with a conclusion already decided. She leaned forward slightly, as if it would soften the blow. "It's just, we've been doing the math, and with the baby coming and all the renovations, it's getting a little tight. We were wondering," he added quickly, "if you'd considered staying with Aunt Margaret for a bit longer. Just until after the baby's born." There it was. Like I'd been handed an eviction notice written in baby pink. "I see," I said. She smiled with relief, mistaking my calm for compliance. "It's only temporary, of course. Just until we get everything settled. And the nursery's right next to the master bedroom," he added. "We'll need quiet at night." I looked at my son, the boy I'd raised on my own until he was 10. I thought about the nights I sat up with him through stomach flus, fevers, night terrors. The years I worked double shifts so he could have braces, art lessons, a used Toyota on his 16th birthday. All of that. All of me. So he could grow up and gently edge me out of his life like a chair that no longer fit the decor. They looked at me expectantly, waiting for me to make it easy for them. I reached for my cup of tea, though it was cold now. "No," I said simply. The silence was sharp. She blinked. "No. No," I repeated. "I won't be going back to Margaret's. This is still my house." My son frowned. "Come on, Mom. We're just asking for a bit of flexibility." "No. You're asking me to move out of my own home." Again. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "We thought you'd understand." "I do understand," I said. "I understand perfectly." I stood and carried my tea to the sink. Behind me, they were whispering. I didn't bother to listen. I knew the words already: rigid, unreasonable, dramatic. The old woman is getting difficult. But what they didn't know was that I'd found the letter. The one I was waiting for. I had picked it up from the notary's office myself on the way home. A manila envelope, sealed and stamped with the date. I had slipped it into the lining of my handbag before walking through the door. They had no idea. The envelope was still in my purse, tucked behind a zippered compartment I hadn't used in years. My fingers brushed against it every time I reached for my keys, and it was like touching a live wire. Just knowing it was there made the evening bearable. After they went to bed, doors closed, lights off, the low hum of their sound machine buzzing through the hall, I sat at the kitchen table alone. The catalog was still there, open to a page with bassinets and tiny, overpriced crib sheets. I stared at it for a while before shutting it gently. Then I reached for my bag and slid the envelope out. It was thicker than I expected. Notarized, stamped, and final. 3 weeks earlier, I'd gone to the courthouse alone. Not to file a complaint or make a scene, just to put something in motion. A quiet motion, like the first slow turn of a wheel. It was something my mother taught me long ago. When you feel powerless, start with paper. This paper was the deed. The house had always been mine. Bought in my name when Harold died, paid off over 30 years through 1,000 sacrifices no one ever saw. The equity was mine. The taxes, mine. And though I'd signed a few documents when Michael moved in, giving him temporary co-ownership to qualify for a small home improvement loan, I'd never signed it over completely. The notary confirmed it. The house was still legally under my name. Sole owner. They thought I wouldn't remember that detail. They were wrong. I tucked the envelope back into my purse and went upstairs. The hallway was dark, the air heavy with lavender oil from one of her diffusers. The scent made my stomach turn now. I passed the nursery, still half empty, still littered with paint rollers and open boxes of baby supplies, and reached the guest room. My room. Still technically mine, though my presence there now seemed to make everyone uncomfortable. I sat on the edge of the bed, the mattress already sagging where I'd slept for months, and stared out the window. I didn't cry. I hadn't for a while. The tears had stopped sometime in late April, when she started taking over the kitchen. A little at a time. First it was the olive oil in a prettier bottle. Then her glass jars for dry goods, pushing mine to the back of the cupboard. Eventually, even the tea towels had changed. White linen with little pink flowers, not the sturdy cotton ones I'd used for years. I hadn't said anything. Not then. But the envelope in my bag said everything I hadn't. The next morning, I woke early. Their bedroom door was still closed, and the sun hadn't yet crept through the blinds. I made myself coffee, my coffee, the strong bitter kind she said was too harsh, and sat at the table, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator. At 7:15, the bedroom door opened. She came out first, in a silky robe, one hand already on her stomach. She smiled faintly when she saw me. "Morning." I nodded. Morning. She reached for a glass, poured filtered water from the fridge, and leaned against the counter. We're going to look at paint samples today, she said after a moment. Soft greens. Maybe a pale yellow. I said nothing. She glanced at me again, just a flick of the eyes. You know, we really are trying to make this work. We just need space. I sipped my coffee. You've had this house to yourself for 20 years, she went on. It's a big change, I get that. But this is a new chapter for all of us. Michael and I need room to grow. She said it with that soft, kind voice she used with strangers. The one that made people think she was gentle. But I knew better. I waited a beat before answering. You already have space. I gave up half the kitchen. My room's being turned into a nursery. I don't sit in the living room if you're watching something. I eat in here, alone. Her face didn't change, but something in her posture did. Straighter. More alert. You're making this more difficult than it needs to be. I stood slowly. No. I think you'll find I'm about to make it very simple. And I walked past her, calm, steady, into the living room. My son had just come in, hair still damp from the shower. What's going on? I reached into my bag and pulled out the envelope. This is the deed to the house, I said. It's in my name. It's always been in my name. I've had it reviewed and reissued through a notary. He blinked. What? I handed him the papers. Read it. He did. Line by line. The silence grew heavy. Finally, he looked up. Why are you showing us this? To remind you, I said, whose house this is. He opened his mouth to respond, but I raised a hand. For months, I've made room. I've stepped aside. I've let you treat me like a guest in my own home. That ends today. They both stared at me like I'd slapped them. I'll be drawing up a rental agreement, I continued. 2 months. That's how long you'll have to find another place. You'll pay what's fair. And when the baby comes, you can raise her in a home of your own, one you respect. Mom. No. I'm not your problem to manage. And I won't be treated like one. She looked pale now. We can't afford rent right now. The baby. Then you should have thought of that before trying to evict me. He stepped forward. You're being cruel. No, I said. I'm being clear. They left the room without another word. I heard their bedroom door close. Not slammed, just shut, firm, final. Like they'd retreated to regroup. I expected yelling. Or crying. Or some kind of confrontation that would let me finally say all the things I hadn't said. But instead, the house fell into that old, heavy kind of quiet. The kind that used to come right before a storm when Harold and I still fought behind closed doors. I sat down at the kitchen table again, folded my hands in front of me. My tea had gone cold. The rental agreement was already drafted. Mildred, my lawyer, had helped me put it together last week. She called it a leaseback document. Fair rent for 2 adults and a child to be, due on the 1st of every month. Utilities, shared. Use of the shared spaces, outlined in detail. Guest privileges limited to 3 nights a week, with notice. They thought I wouldn't go that far. They didn't think I had it in me. At 11 o'clock, my son came out of the bedroom. Alone. He looked like he hadn't slept at all. Mom, he said quietly, can we talk? I nodded, but I didn't smile. He sat across from me, like he used to when he was in trouble in high school. Scraped his knee on the sidewalk. Lied about sneaking out to meet friends. I used to sit right here and explain the world to him. Back when he still believed I knew what I was talking about. Why didn't you tell us about the deed before? Because I didn't think I had to, I said. Because I thought you'd remember whose house this was. He swallowed. We just thought, you'd want to be near the baby. Be part of her life. We weren't trying to push you out. You told me to leave. He looked down. It was temporary. It wouldn't have been. He didn't deny it. We sat in silence for a moment. Then, quietly, I asked, why didn't you defend me? He looked up, confused. She's been slowly replacing me in this house. Bit by bit. You've seen it. You know it. And you've said nothing. His jaw tensed. It's complicated. No. It's not. I leaned forward. When she started moving things out of the guest room, when she suggested I stay with Margaret for longer, when she started treating my kitchen like it was hers, you didn't say a word. You let it happen. I didn't want to start a fight. You didn't want to disappoint her. He flinched. I nodded. I understand. I do. But there's a difference between building a new life and erasing the one that came before it. She's not trying to erase you. She is, I said, gently. And you're letting her. He looked like he wanted to argue, but nothing came out. Just that same blank stare he used to give when caught between two truths he didn't like. I slid the rental document across the table. You'll both need to sign this by the end of the week. First payment due on the 1st of next month. That gives you 6 weeks to make a decision. A decision. Whether you want to live here with me under clear terms, or find your own place. His face hardened. You're choosing paperwork over family. No, I said. I'm choosing boundaries. You're welcome here, both of you, as long as those are respected. And if we don't agree, then you'll need to leave. I'll give you 2 months to find something. After that, I'll start the eviction process. His mouth opened, then shut. This isn't a threat, I said calmly. It's a limit. And limits aren't cruel. They're healthy. He stood slowly. You've changed. I've remembered who I am. He left without another word. I listened to the creak of the floorboards as he walked away, and I didn't cry. Not this time. That evening, she avoided me. I made a pot of soup, lentils and carrots, something warm and familiar, and left it simmering on the stove. She ordered takeout. I heard the delivery arrive through the screen door, smelled the tangy vinegar of fried food as she carried the bag to the bedroom. They ate behind closed doors. Fine by me. I sat on the porch with my tea, listening to the cicadas stir in the hedges. It was early summer now. The nights were still cool, but the days had started to hold heat. I remembered sitting on this porch with Harold in the 90s, passing the time after Michael went to bed. We'd drink coffee then, not tea. Always strong, always too hot. We talked about retirement, what we'd do when the mortgage was paid. Back then, the house still felt like a promise. Funny how things turn. The next morning, she knocked on my bedroom door. I was folding laundry, cotton shirts worn thin with time. I looked up, surprised. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed. Hair still wet from a shower. She didn't wear her usual soft expression. I'm not signing anything, she said. Then you'll need to leave by September 1st. Her eyes flared. You'd really throw us out. Me. Your grandchild. I'm not throwing anyone out, I said. I'm giving you a choice. She stepped into the room. Do you know how hard this will be on Michael? On me? On the baby? You should have thought of that before you tried to push me out of my own home. I didn't push you. You did, I said. Not with your hands. With your silence. With your small, calculated changes. with your careful nudging toward the door. She stared at me. You're a bitter old woman. And you're a girl who thought she could take everything without asking. She was quiet for a long time. I thought you'd be grateful, she said at last. For what? For letting you be part of this. The baby. Our family. I laughed. Not cruelly. Just softly, with disbelief. You came into my house. Took my things. Used my son. And now you think I should be grateful. Her jaw tightened. This isn't how families act, she snapped. No. It's how people act when they mistake kindness for weakness. And then I turned my back to her and kept folding. For 2 days, they barely spoke to me. Not openly, anyway. They spoke around me, about errands, appointments, the nursery paint still needing a second coat. She carried on as though the confrontation had never happened, but every movement of hers was stiff with silent protest. She moved through rooms like a tenant already packing, and he trailed behind her, subdued, lost between loyalties he no longer knew how to navigate. I gave them space. Not out of pity. Not out of hope. But because I'd already given them the most important thing they would ever get from me, a clear decision. One afternoon, I came home from the library and found her in the kitchen, wiping the counter with more energy than necessary. She didn't look up when I came in. The property manager called, she said finally. There's a place on Elmsworth with 2 bedrooms. Small, but new appliances. Walkable to the pediatrician's office. I said nothing. Just set down my canvas bag and started unpacking groceries. They want first and last month up front, she continued. Which we don't have yet. She turned then, met my eyes. There was no softness in her expression. No vulnerability either. Just the hard-eyed practicality of a woman who finally realized she'd misjudged her opponent. I'm not asking for charity, she added. I'm asking if you want to help your granddaughter have a roof over her head. I looked at her calmly. I'm offering a roof. Here. With boundaries. Her mouth twisted. So that's it. You win. It's not about winning. Yes, it is. It always has been. I let that sit. I watched her, this woman my son chose, so polished, so self-contained, so convinced that grace only belonged to the young and beautiful. I could see now she'd mistaken my silence for submission. My hospitality for surrender. And now she didn't know what to do with the woman in front of her. The one who still owned the house. I've raised children, I said. I know what it means to protect them. But you've mistaken protection for control. She didn't respond. I didn't expect her to. The next morning, my son stood in the kitchen, alone, nursing a cup of coffee with both hands like it might give him the strength he needed. We're moving out, he said. I nodded. All right. We found a place. Not perfect, but it'll do. I'm glad. He looked down. She's angry. I know. He rubbed the back of his neck, a gesture from childhood that made him look young again. I didn't think it would come to this. It always comes to this, I said. Eventually. He looked up sharply. What do you mean? I hesitated. Then, softly, eventually, every mother has to remind her children that she was a person before she gave them everything. His face changed. There was guilt in it, but something else too, maybe understanding. I didn't mean for it to go this way. But you let it. I didn't know how to stop it. You don't have to stop everything, Michael. Just the things you let happen in silence. He swallowed. Will you still want to see the baby? Of course. She's going to grow up not understanding any of this. I smiled, just a little. That's the gift. She won't have to. They moved out 2 weeks later. Boxes piled neatly on the porch, labeled in her perfect handwriting: kitchen, nursery, office. A small truck came in the early morning, and I stood behind the lace curtain, watching. He carried most of the boxes himself. She stood by the truck door, giving instructions. No goodbyes. No second chances. Just efficiency. Before they left, he came inside once more. Walked through the now silent house and found me in the dining room. "I'll call you," he said. I nodded. "I mean it. I know." He hugged me then, awkward, brief, but real. I didn't cry. He looked around. "Feels emptier. It feels quieter." He smiled faintly. That, too. When they were gone, I cleaned the guest room. Washed the sheets. Opened the windows. The nursery was half painted, still smelling faintly of lavender and latex. I let it be. That evening, I made myself a small dinner and ate it at the kitchen table with the windows open. The breeze carried sounds from down the block: a dog barking, the neighbor's wind chimes, a child's bicycle rattling across the sidewalk. No one asked me to leave. No one moved my chair. No one replaced my butter dish. The house was mine again. And for the first time in months, so was I. September came quietly. The trees along Maple Drive turned early that year, soft rust at the tips, yellow creeping in like memory. I watched the season change from the porch, mug in hand, sweater drawn around my shoulders. I had taken back the porch furniture, too. The teak rocking chair Harold bought after Michael was born. The old blue cushion with the faded pattern. I brought it all back out from the garage where they'd stored it, boxed and labeled: too worn, too old. That's what I'd become to them. A well-meaning antique. But the chair still held my shape. I still fit. I got a card the first week of the month, no return address, just neat handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside, a photo of the baby. A girl, small and red-faced and wrapped in something pale yellow. On the back, one line written in her mother's hand. Her name is Iris. No apology. No invitation. Just a name. I stared at that one word for a long time. I traced the loops in the S, the way her handwriting always tilted a little to the right. Iris. A name like something soft and growing, something that didn't yet know about division or control. I placed the photo on the refrigerator with a plain magnet. Nothing sentimental. Just enough to keep her from slipping. The rest of the house had gone still in their absence. Not empty, just still. I cleaned the floors, opened the curtains, filled the rooms with lavender and pine. The scent of who I'd been before they moved in. The woman who lit candles in the evening and folded napkins into little triangles. Who still set the table even when eating alone. I began writing again, too. Just in a notebook. Not letters, not complaints. Not even memories. Just thoughts. Observations. How many birds came to the feeder in the morning? What I overheard at the grocer's. What it meant to wake in a bed that didn't creak with resentment anymore. One afternoon, I ran into Margaret at the post office. "Well, look who it is," she said, adjusting her sun hat. I smiled. "Been a while. Got the house back yet? Got my peace back?" She peered at me. "You look different." "I feel different." She nodded slowly. "Good." We talked a little about the garden, about the neighborhood, about how her niece was making a mess of the church newsletter. But beneath it all, I knew she wanted to ask more. She wouldn't. Margaret was old school that way. Dignity first, details later. She'd ask again in 6 months when we were both ready to laugh about it. And I would laugh. One day. Not yet. Later that evening, a letter arrived. Michael's handwriting this time. Small, careful. Mom. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For not speaking up sooner. For letting things go too far. You didn't deserve that. Iris is beautiful. She sleeps a lot. Her hair is already dark. She has your chin, I think. Or maybe I just hope she does. We're still settling in. It's smaller here. Quieter. Harder, sometimes. But I think we needed this. If you want to visit, you can. We're not ready for much else, but we'd like you to meet her. Just for an hour or so. No expectations. Just family. Love. Michael. I read the letter twice. Then again. I held it in both hands like something delicate and half forgiven. No expectations. Just family. I placed it next to the photo on the fridge. 2 days later, I made soup. Chicken with rice and herbs from the back garden. I wrapped it carefully, double-bagged in case it spilled, and placed it in a shallow box with a card tucked inside. No long message, no guilt. Just a short note. For Iris. From her grandmother. I drove across town without calling first. The apartment complex was plain, 2-story brick with a small courtyard and narrow parking spaces. I'd written the unit number on the back of my hand. He opened the door after 2 knocks. Hi, he said, almost surprised. Hi. He looked at the box in my hands. Smells good. Soup. He stepped back. You want to come in? No, I said. Not yet. I'm not ready. He nodded. That's okay. She's sleeping. He smiled. Most of the time. I won't stay. Just wanted you to have this. He took the box, held it like something precious. Thank you. I'll come back. When it's right. He nodded again, voice quiet. We'd like that. I turned and walked back down the stairs. As I reached the car, I looked up once. Their curtain moved slightly. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel erased. I felt seen.